You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
When I flew back home yesterday, Brendan, I'm notorious, and I talk about a little bit about not getting hit with the jet lag.
Ah, yeah.
2 p.m. in the afternoon, I fell asleep for a good 2 to 3 hours.
That's because you just consistently make bad decisions. I was there at the Guild House at 2 a.m. when I was going to sleep, which I should have not been out that late anyway, but you were not. You were going somewhere else because you thought it'd be a good idea to not sleep that night and get on your flight at 7 a.m. and then you do your 20-hour flight to Australia or whatever it is. So I don't know if that's jet lag or you just realized you're finally a human being.
Might be the latter. Yeah, no, I feel much better today. Day 2 of being back home. Had a good night's sleep last night, feeling well rested. But look, it's the last night of the World Championship. How could I just turn around and head straight home when there's more people to hang out with, you know?
Maybe book a later flight next time.
Yeah, that's probably my lesson learned, to be honest. But I got home late at night on the Tuesday, I think about 8 p.m, and then went straight to bed and then woke up the next morning and felt mostly good until, as I say, about 2 p.m. But yeah, well, we are home from the World Championship, Brendan. It's all over. It's nothing but a dream at this point, a distant memory. You know, reality sets in. This is episode 83 of Arsenal Pass, the Flesh and Blood World Championship 2022, where we're going to reflect on our past weekend. Very different weekends for both of us, very different perspectives. You know, Brendan, yourself spending the weekend in the coverage booth, myself out on the floor. But we did get to hang out a little bit, maybe not as much as we usually like. You know, we got to see each other at some social events. And we're going to talk all about what happened at Worlds, our sort of lessons learnt, our highs, lows, and maybe where this format goes next, as we are about to see Dynasty release this coming weekend. As this pod drops actually around the world, it's already released in some countries, and you'll be getting your hands on it very soon. But, you know, Brendan, won't dive into your week in Flesh and Blood because that's kind of our pod this week. But, you know, how are you feeling post getting back? Obviously not as long a flight for you as it was for me, but a bit of travel.
Yeah, I'm still good. My throat is a bit raspy, so it might be coming through on the podcast here. But I feel great. I had an awesome time, which we're going to recap, obviously, throughout this pod. But you know, my situation during this tournament was quite different from previous tournament, and I did really enjoy it. To be honest, I thought it was a great success, at least for me personally. And just really can't express enough how happy I am with the weekend, the event, and just everything that surrounds that. The people, these experiences for us, they truly are just a touch above everything else in my life, to be honest. And I'm just really, really appreciative that we get to do these kinds of things in our life.
Yeah, this game has the best community. I'm sure, you know, we've said it before on the pod. People say it all the time, but it really is true that the community that surrounds this game kind of makes it. You know, if you take out of isolation the people that were there this weekend, look, the venue wasn't great. There's some things to be said about that. The experience at the venue with facilities and things was not perfect, far from it, in fact. But you know, the game itself, the people that surround it, the people who make this game and spend, you know, a lot of their time on this game. Also, you know, talk a bit about that with the the Div Challenge. It's like, there he is, Brendan Patrick touching the mic. We'll talk about the Div Challenge and stuff, and some of the cool people that, you know, gave up their time to be at the World Championship. But yeah, got a first big shout out for this podcast has to go to the Flesh and Blood community. Brendan, we're going to dive into it. Should we talk some news and stuff first? Because we do have a few different things to cover before we get into the main topic of the pod.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can probably lead it off with just a big congratulations to a sort of friend of the channel, Mr. Michael Hamilton. I think that Michael Hamilton is an extremely talented individual, but on top of that, does work very hard, and probably one of the best champions that Flesh and Blood could ask for. A very humble person. And yeah, I'm just very, very proud of Michael for how far he's come in such a short amount of time. And I do think that as a community, we should be very happy with Michael Hamilton being our, you know, first official world champion.
Yeah, massive congrats to Michael. Look, I mean, it's so funny. It's like so excited for him, and you know, standing there on Sunday watching the presentation, it was just so funny. I was just like, oh, this isn't at all surprising. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you know, there was obviously a lot of narratives coming into this event with so many amazing players in this game, and this World Championship was a level above. Like even the Pro Tours, people were playing hard. People had prepped. The quality of play at this event was just out of this world. But for some reason, when it was all the dust settled and Michael was standing there, I just was like, "Yep, okay, it makes a lot of sense." But to me, honestly, it was like, I mean, he was like even favorite for me to win this event. So massive congrats to Michael though. Like doesn't put out all his hard work, because he put a lot of effort into to make sure he could do this, could hold that trophy, aloft on Sunday. And also just a massive congratulations to everyone that competed at Worlds. Just getting to the World Championships in itself is a feat. It was the hardest event to qualify for so far. There was no Pro Quest season for this. This is the World Championships. You had to redeem a PTI. You had to be ELO ranked, or I guess some people might say the XP line-in, which was my line-in for this event, was the easiest way in. But even then, people are still showing up at their locals, at these events, at these grind fests that are Road to Nationals and ProQuest week after week, to make sure that they can be there. And also to the top 8, a stacked top 8 really. And some other narratives continued to be evolved and started this weekend. And I just can't wait for the 2023 OP season, because it's going to be a continuation of what has happened here at World Championships. I look at someone like Chris Iali, who made the final against Michael in his own right, has his own kind of narrative that's building. Someone like Daniel Rakowski, who got a rematch with Michael after that US Nationals final. Things like that. These, I'm sure you guys are talking about all this in the booth. I haven't caught up with the top 8 coverage yet, but yeah.
I just want to point out the most important narrative, which is, for some reason, it's been downplayed over the past few months. There's these little tournaments called Pro Tours, and some people seem to take them seriously. But I mean, almost objectively, and is that the United States is the strongest region in the world. Everybody else simply does not compare. I mean, look at how many people we put in that top 8, and then ultimately the champion, Michael Hamilton, the United States golden boy right there. No, but it was a bit of a performance for the U.S. after a few disappointing Pro Tours, and it was nice. It was cool for the narrative to have that much success in this tournament. And Michael Hamilton, yeah, take it down. I mean, he's truly just quite the flesh and blood player at this point.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the full event, and I want to talk more about that top 8 breakdown and more about these narratives. And there's a particular region, Brendan, that I think might have overshadowed the US. Although Michael won this weekend, there was a region that really came to the forefront this weekend. But we'll talk about that more as we get into the pod. Want to also give a massive shout out to Chandler Toe for winning the Calling San Jose on Reiner, Brendan. What an awesome achievement. People might not realize, but me and Chandler actually played in the World Championships. We played in round 4 on camera. Chandler was playing Reiner in that. I managed to get the W there, but actually Chandler had a rematch against one of our testing group, Mike, in the Calling, playing against Reiner. And Chandler learned his lesson, he said, and did not go shields down against Mike and took that match. So that was a cool story to hear. And Chandler, just an awesome dude. We're actually going to have Chandler on the channel this coming week, probably in the next 2 days after this pod drops, with his Reiner deck, doing a full deck tech for Arsenal Pass. So super excited to do that. And, again, two very deserving winners this weekend, and two very cool people, which is awesome.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to dig into it, but the class constructed meta, both at Worlds and the Calling, was absolutely wild.
Yep. We will. We definitely will. Otherwise, in the news, a few things we want to cover. Dynasty releases this Friday around the world. We've seen the full set now. Me and Brendan, we actually did a patrons pod about 10 days ago, I want to say. We talked about the previous season so far and what we'd seen. And I think I want to give us the opportunity, Brendan, to talk about this quickly with everyone. And I want you to give me, out of 10, how excited you are for Dynasty. Because I think at the time, if I'm being honest, I was like, yeah, this set looks okay. It looks good. I'm excited about some things. But the 3 days of full previews just blew me away. Like the full reveal of Assassin, all the class cards, the cards we saw for all the heroes, all the classes rather, just I think took it up a level. It really reminds me a lot of what Crucible of War did to this game at the start, introducing new ways for heroes to play. And I think if I was to now look at it, I can't wait to get my hands on Dynasty tomorrow and start brewing and playing. My kind of thought was, maybe I'll wait a few weeks and grab my Dynasty cards. But Brendan, I've already pre-ordered basically everything. So I'm excited to get into it. If I gave a rating to what the set looks like to me before we even get to play with it, I have really high expectations. I'm around like an 8.5, 9. Like the set looks really cool to me.
Same for me. I would say when we evaluated it with the spoilers we were working with, it was around a 5. Not bad, but not good either. It was just the math was sort of quantitatively below, and we didn't see too many other mechanics to go on top of that would make up for sort of that math matrix being a bit lower than we were expected. That's been blown out of the water with the introduction of the assassin class and, some strict upgrades for wizard, which I'm not too disappointed about, but a lot of cards to expand on current heroes that exist, new ways to play current heroes. And I think that's something that Crucible of War gave us that Dynasty will now expand on even more.
Mm-hmm. Next week, we are doing a Dynasty and Classic Constructed or Constructed sort of review pod where we're going to dive. It's going to be a longer one. We're going to dive right into Dynasty. I think that's right, Brendan, next week. But before there, is there like one or two cards that you're kind of already eyeing up that you want to get straight into and play games? Like for me, Looming Doom, the new Runeblade card, is something that I really want to try and build around and have a look at. And Brainstorm. I mean, I've got to have a look at this Brainstorm card. Is there an OTK combo? I mean, in theory, there is. Is it good? We'll see.
Yeah, I wonder if that OTK combo is too on the nose that they would have, made it not powerful enough, because it's so clear to see. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm good. This might be a win con. So I wonder if it'll just be sort of an incremental advantage card, referring to Brainstorm. For me, I'm mostly the thing I'm most excited for is the assassin class in general. I think it's an extremely cool way of playing Flesh and Blood. This idea of manipulating the top card of your opponent's deck, creating these contracts, and a lot of blue cards that block for 3. It's it's right up my alley. And on top of that, I just want to dig more into Wizard. I think is potentially, after coming off of casting this weekend, I do have the opportunity to sort of play a lot of heroes that I really enjoy, right? Unless I'm preparing for a major event, I'm able to sort of dive into Wizard and just get deeper into Kano and Icelander, which are the 2 heroes that just bring me the most joy in Flesh and Blood right now.
Mm-hmm. Future events. Well, I've got a question for you about that in the main topic of the pod, and be interesting to hear what you sort of feel for the future of Brendan Patrick. This is going to be a pod full of stories and anecdotes that I'm sure, and one was for me Saturday night. We come back, top 8's all set in stone. I'm getting ready for the dev challenge, and a couple of the guys come back and they're like, all right, let's fire up, as James White intended it, let's fire up Talishar across the table from each other on a couple of laptops and play Arachne games. Which was cool to see. Everyone just getting into it, right, and wanting to play with this new class, the Assassin class, which is super cool. So yeah, by the time this pod drops, halfway around the world, Dynasty is released, and in North America and Europe, not far off, so go and get your hands on it. Goliath Gauntlet wrapped up just before the Pro Tour. Don't let that be overshadowed by the Pro Tour, an amazing event run by 983 Media with some of the casting team, your Flesh and Blood casting team that you saw this past weekend in San Jose, and a big congratulations. Avert your ears now if you still haven't watched it, but Margin Bay for taking it out on Icelander in a content creator showdown final against DM Armada. And I think if anyone had those 2 in the final in their brackets, phone in, because I'd be very, very surprised. But both of them did amazing, and some great scalps and results. Margin Bay taking out Michael Hamilton on the way, and Tarek Patel being bested by DM Armada in that event. And just a really well-run event, and I'm excited to see more of this kind of thing in the future. I hope that, in fact, this sort of thing is the sort of thing we could see now during downtime and things like that with new sets. So I'm sure we'll see more things in the future.
I think a lot of people wrote off the content creators in those brackets, but interesting to see a final between 2 quote-unquote content creators. And not surprised to see Imagine Bay take it out. Of course, my round 1 loss, if I hadn't faced Imagine, probably would have made it to the finals. But no, he's a fantastic player. I'm actually a huge fan of him as a human being. Had the sort of pleasure of meeting him multiple times now throughout the year. It's probably years now, I guess. First met him in the Calling Dallas, but awesome dude, very nice, very humble, and just a pleasure to be around.
I agree. Got to have a few chats with him this weekend and almost convinced him to play Kano in the Calling, but he decided to play Icelander. Should have played Kano, but that's okay. Want to also give just a big shout out to all the Arsenal Pass patrons. We met a big group of them at Worlds. We got a really cool AP patron photo. There was, obviously not everyone, but we did get a photo with those who could make it over and grab a photo with us. And thanks for, to everyone for coming and saying hello to us. Brendan, I'm sure, you got to have conversations with a lot of people. You're very busy, a bit more busy than I was. I didn't really get to see much of you. I'm sure people grabbed you when they could. But it was really nice to have people come up and chat, especially at things like the Guild House afterwards and things like that.
There's a pretty sick promo prize for showing up for that picture as well.
More on that in a minute. Yeah, a few of our patrons who did show up to get the photo with us got a first exclusive. They got gifted something that we're going to be giving away some of these as well as they are going to be available for purchase very soon. But more on that. Actually, more on that right now because we do have a 5,000 sub giveaway. Brendan, we hit 5,000 subscribers on YouTube thanks to everyone who's been subbing to the channel, giving us the big thumbs up on our videos and just getting us out there to more people. It really helps and, we really appreciate it. But we do have a 5,000 sub giveaway as promised. We're giving away 2 sort of Arsenal Pass swag packs. I don't know what to call them, Brendan, but to celebrate 5,000 subs that include, we've got a t-shirt for you. You might have seen me wearing this at Worlds with the Arsenal Pass logo on it. There's a playmat in there, Arsenal Pass resource token, which is what we're about to put up as well for sale. You can see this. I'm showing this on camera right now. If you can kind of see that, can you? You see that, Brendan? Is that coming up? Very, very cool. Oh, if I get the right way. There we go. Enamel finished resource token with our Arsenal Pass colorations and branding on it. And this is in conjunction with Metal Fab Tokens. They've done an amazing job, Brandon over there, putting this together. I don't think the camera's quite doing it justice here, but it's finished up really well with that enamel finish, which is great. There's one of those in the pack as well as a pad and a playset of full art foil Herald of Rebirth. So if you want to get in the draw, Brendan, I didn't actually think this far ahead.
Surely it is. Throw a comment up on YouTube because that does help engagement, and make sure you like and subscribe as well. We're at 5,000 now, but 6,000 is right around the corner, and even better if you're feeling super generous right around the holiday season, right around Christmas, throw us a nice review on your podcast platform of choice. Rate this podcast.com/ArsenalPass, but throw us a nice 5-star review if you like the pod and tell us a funny joke as well. It helps us out more than I can articulate into words because SEO is everything. And I do appreciate so much all of the reviews we've gotten so far. They genuinely have helped push our podcast past what we ever could have imagined.
Yeah, 100%. Wow. Great job, Brendan. That was what everyone comes to listen to the podcast for. Is for the spiel. Exactly. No, but if you do want to get your hands on this swag pack, Arsenal Pass swag pack with those heralds in there as well, just drop a comment below. Just whatever you want. Maybe give us some feedback. Give us some stuff of what you'd like us to cover in the future. We've 83 episodes deep. There's a lot of things that are on our mind that we'd like to cover with sort of big full episodes. But if there's things that you'd love to hear us talk about, or just maybe you've got something that you loved that Brendan said over the weekend on commentary. Or you want to give commiserations for my Rhinar game on camera, whatever, you drop your comments below. And also more details to come on these cool resource tokens and how you can get these. They will be up, I believe, next week on Fab Metal Tokens website. Metal Fab Tokens. My goodness, Brandon was saying I just could not get it right all weekend. Metal Fab Tokens. We do have a few things coming up on the channel as well. Just lastly, before we close it out, there's a few sort of announcements and stuff. So we do have a deck tech with Chandler coming up this week on his Rhinar list that took down the calling. We do have probably a video coming on Kano at some point, but no firm time on that. Obviously, I played Kano at the PT and our whole sort of testing group is on it. It probably won't be a traditional deck tech, but it will be diving into a lot of things Kano related. Icelander deck tech we will do on the Icelander list that we played at Worlds. A bit of a funkier Icelander list. And a Kano Cyborg guide from the World Championship list will go up on the Patreon in the next week. We do also have, as well, our Dynasty and Classic Constructed and Blitz review pod next week. And then, Brendan, you have something very special that you want to tell everyone about that's up and coming for early next year.
Yeah, so I think we're going to close out the hard details at the end of this pod, but just to sort of tease it a bit, the next Fab Fitness Challenge is sort of in the works. It's done. It's going to be a marathon in Austin, Texas on February 19th. I was schmoozing a lot of big content creators this weekend and have gotten a lot of people involved, big names, household names, people that I have dreamed of working with, quote unquote, might be a part of some so-called wolf pack or something like that, but going to be joining us in Austin. I think this is going to be an awesome event. I did say there's a marathon, but there's, of course, also a half marathon and a 5K. Do heavily encourage anybody and everybody to come out. 5Ks, you can walk them. They are pretty hard to run as well. I personally will be doing the marathon and will be training from now up until then. So we'll be documenting all of my training schedule, my diet, everything. I'm basically going from zero to hero with this. I'm a person that if I had not been training, I would struggle to run a mile. I'm genuinely terrible at it. So I tried to pick the hardest thing I could possibly conceive, because if I can do it, you can absolutely do it too. More details on that, but Austin, Texas, February 19th. tons of people going, tons of content creators. I think we have a chance to make this the biggest community event that has ever happened in Flesh and Blood. And I just really hope to see you all out there. As always, the main communication portal for us is going to be on our Patreon Discord. You do not need to be on there whatsoever. There'll be tons of stuff on Twitter. But if you do want to get down in sort of the mud with me, hop on our Patreon Discord, and we'll be sorting out all sort of training regimens, diet, all that good stuff. I'm super excited, Hayden, and I'm training. I'm already training pretty hard for this marathon, and it's gonna be rough.
Head start. I heard it. Okay. No, it's
I had like a 2 weeks head start. Give me a break.
I do know Brendan is not the most accomplished runner, so he might need it, as would I, to be honest. No, very exciting. So yeah, as Brendan says, watch out for more details to come.
Yeah, I do want to also throw out, sorry, this is a little bit of an addendum, but throw out a little call to action here in terms of like for that event. If there is anybody, we are looking for someone to help us organize it. So this is going to be kind of a bigger logistical undertaking in terms of like setting up the venue, places to meet, getting people there, sponsors, like all of that. If somebody does want to help you, want to help us with that, please reach out to me. Please DM me. We are happy to pay you either in cash or pay for your flights and accommodation to get to the event, but it would be super helpful if there's someone who genuinely enjoys doing something like that, or just you think you're very good at it. I am notoriously not. I sort of make do with what I can, but I'm the thinker. You know, I don't know, just not great at organizing, to be honest, and I need to get better at it. But if you want to help and that's something you're interested in, please reach out to me because I would be incredibly useful.
He's an ideas man, you know.
Yeah, that's what every sort of disorganized like person's like. I'm the idea guy. Like, nah, you're not.
No. All right, Ben. Well, moving on, because some people have accused us of fluffing the pod before, and we've spent 20 minutes talking about not really Flesh and Blood, but I think some really exciting stuff. Commander Cookout time. Don't know if you were down in San Jose, but there was a few barbecues happening down there. So we have a great.
I was just gonna say, is this the one where people got robbed, or the one that people didn't?
Wait, what?
Oh no, I kind of want to apologize on behalf of the United States for the people that unfortunately ran into some trouble in California. One of the players being in the top 8, and of course Jacob Peterson. Sorry about that. That man is a magnet for chaos.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I had heard about I actually couldn't be happier when I saw Viet in the top 8. We played day 1. He was my first loss on day 1, I think round 5 or 6. And yeah, no one deserves a bit of a return on that weekend more than Viet after a pretty unfortunate event there. So, all right, Commander Cookout time. We have a question from the Tickler Foundry from Marco, who we actually got to meet at the Patreon sort of catch up and photo sesh that we did at Worlds. And I think a really great question, and one, Brendan, that I think we've both sort of thought about and I readdressed this weekend before the event. But any tips for planning food during events? In San Jose, I didn't have a plan for food and often skipped most of my meals. When I was able to eat, it usually wasn't nutritious food and had to be within walking distance of the tent. My food and sleep quality were poor, impacted by my play during the day as I was pretty exhausted. How do you prepare ahead of time for large-scale events? Sorry, I had to chuckle there just about the tent. It's just going to be an ongoing thing, the tent, because if you saw coverage, you saw the inside of it. You did not see the outside. Brendan, any thoughts from your side? What about, you're on coverage. Like, what about even for this weekend? Like, how did you get access to food and stuff? Like, I think I barely saw you. You were, if not covering most rounds, then you were on the card viewer. You were around talking to people.
So the same way I always get food. So the way I've celiac disease, so I can't eat gluten, and I rarely eat dairy, so I'm not just going to go scarf down a yogurt. So I literally cannot eat anything at those concession stands. So none of that food is even in my possible wheelhouse. So for me, I always bring food. So I will go to a grocery store beforehand, find sort of somewhat nutritious food, whether it's fruit, some chicken, maybe find something like a gluten-free sandwich that can get me through the day. And I'll do that and kind of black coffee. On the other hand, if you are on coverage specifically, they do some Uber Eats orders, which can tend to be kind of hard for me again because of the celiac and the gluten, and Uber Eats is just notoriously terrible for allergies and stuff. So I would order some food in, but during an event, I always bring food. I think that's like one of the best ways to be prepared, to be honest, is just bring food to the event. That concession food, not only is it most of it garbage for your body. It's actually extremely overpriced and expensive, and I don't think that you should be buying it anyway. So yeah, just hit a grocery store the night before and find stuff that's easy to pack. I bring a little food bag with me. I walk around, to my matches, to my tables with it. That's the way I handle it. Hayden, what about you?
Yeah, hitting a grocery store the night before is a great piece of advice, but I wouldn't recommend spending 45 to 50 minutes in a grocery store because some people don't know how to order a sandwich.
I forgot you were there. Oh my God, Dante Del Fico.
Dante Del Fico ordered a sandwich which took literally half an hour to be made from a little deli counter at a Whole Foods, which was entertaining at first and then ultimately very frustrating. Look, I think there's a few people that have different strategies, so I can talk to what other people I know do as well. So I've got a few friends who are on they're on the no eating strategy. So they like to maybe eat something in the morning or nothing in the morning and then survive off coffee. I think they, for some reason, think that helps their brain focus. I am not in that camp whatsoever. So that one, if you're on that one, you don't need to worry about preparing food, right? You just go for a massive meal after the event. I honestly think it's like during the day and during the weekend, everything happens so fast. It's so hard to be in the moment because you're like round to round, you're chatting to people, so many things are happening. So I do honestly think, like, for instance, like spending a little bit of time to prepare is going to give you the most return. So I did the same. Me and Brendan went to a grocery store the night before. I like to have breakfast in the morning, so I made sure I had breakfast food for the Airbnb, just literally some yogurt, granola, and berries. Like, I feel like it's a good way to start the day. It's some carbohydrates and some proteins, and nothing too overcomplicated, quite simple foods that I know I'm going to be able to digest pretty well during the day. And then I like to just take snacks with me. I don't generally eat lunch myself, just because I don't want to eat something too heavy. I don't like to eat something too heavy, like sandwiches or anything like that during the day. So I'll generally go for like sort of scroggin, trail mix, nuts, whatever you want to call it. Maybe a few sort of like protein bars, a couple of bananas I like to get into as well. And yeah, I don't like to eat too much. And then I'll generally sort of refeed a little bit at the end of the day when we go out for dinner. But that's kind of my strategy. I honestly just think it's like the preparation. Just take some time to get yourself sorted so you, because it really does suck. Like, I know what you're saying, Tickler Foundry, like, if you're on that day and you're like, I'm getting to the point like I'm starving, I can't focus on my games because I'm so hungry. It's like, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to run over to the random cafe where I'm paying $10 for 2 bottles of water and probably $14 for a soggy sandwich, right? Which is, I mean, I won't say all the food there might not have been terrible, but, it's like, is that really what you want to do? And do you want to take the chance? I would just say if you can, at least prep some snacks and stuff so that you can have some sustenance during the day. Unless you're one of these interesting people on the no food strategy, no eating strategy, which apparently works for some people, but does not work for me personally.
I've done a few tournaments and competitions on the no food strategy, and it does work. It does work fine for me. I know some people, they start to focus a little bit on the hunger, but I think it's a strategy. I don't think that if it doesn't explicitly make you better, don't do it because you're going to be unhappy. I would just want to add on to that, Hayden. I think like nutritionally, there's something we've talked about a lot. It's just like, don't fall into the trap of eating like a freaking pizza or something for lunch. That's going to make you tired pretty much every time. And yeah, so anything like heavy carb load is just not the way you want to go. I think you want to go like lean proteins, fruit, little snacks like that. But I can't. I've seen so many people go to that lunch break, eat a massive pizza or something like that, and then just totally comatose for the rest of the tournament.
I've never seen Michael Hamilton eat, so maybe he's on the no eating strategy during events. We have to find out.
I've actually never seen Michael Hamilton eat at all in general.
You've seen him. You have seen him eat a burrito or something to that degree.
Oh yes, I forgot that Michael Hamilton. By the way,
a French Chipotle.
Yes, he only eats Chipotle after tournaments. So like after Worlds, he wanted to go to Chipotle. He always wants to go to Chipotle. So when we were in France, we actually went to the French Chipotle. We went to this burrito Chipotle place. It was literally a French ripoff of a Chipotle, and happy as can be was Michael Hamilton.
Yeah, great question, Tickler Foundry. I think it's something that like if you get to the event and you haven't thought of it beforehand, it can really punish you. So I do think for people heading to events for the first time, I would recommend at least just having some snacks with you. And if you are someone who competes regularly at these kind of events, I would recommend just thinking through what you need. What is it that you need? And basically my assumption is just assume that I can't get anything there and go from there. I think, especially if you have dietary requirements, I think that is the best way to look at it. Again, if you do want to get questions in from the Command and Cookout, we've had some amazing questions roll in over the past few weeks. We actually have a bit of a bank up till probably Christmas time now. But we're always open to more questions. And, if you've got some really timely questions, we always try and squeeze those in. And we'll probably do another mailbag sometime soon. And we'll always use the Command Cookout questions as well. Make sure those get answered. So if you do have a question, you can send those to arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. You can drop them in the YouTube comments below. You can DM us on Twitter or drop them in the Discord if you are an Arsenal Pass Patreon. All right, Brendan, I'm going to throw over to you to talk about Worlds 2022.
Yeah, so I'm going to start it off with, I think, a big topic for you, which is travel. So your travel was a bit different than it was maybe for the other Pro Tours, right? You flew in sort of the day before. Probably not the best for people that do get jet lagged. How did you feel about that travel? How did it affect you? Were you good? Would you change things in the future? Do you feel like you would have preferred to have some more time to potentially play in person, maybe ideate a bit more? What was it like in terms of your travel preparation for this World Championship versus something like Pro Tour 2?
Great question. I'd say usually the kind of preparation for Worlds includes a few days before, preparation for a big event like a Pro Tour Worlds includes in-person testing time. That's kind of what I like to bank in and factor in. I think a lot of groups and testing teams, etc., from around the world like to do that. I think Team Dragon Shield got on the Monday. I know a lot of the Polish players were in the weekend before and set up shop at Airbnbs and hotels and stuff, and we're testing, drafting, getting in last reps, testing matchups in person, things like that. I like doing that, especially when we're not locked on decks, which we haven't been for PT1, PT2, where you're getting in a lot of last minute testing and you can get a lot of reps in very quickly and you're all on the same schedule because, for myself in the past, it's been Brendan, Sasha, and others from around the world. Getting on a single time is near impossible. So being in person, being able to commit this time is it's invaluable, the time, to be honest. World Championship was a lot different for me in this preparation. Brendan obviously moving to the coverage side. And for me, the hardest thing about events this year has just been time taken to get to places and taking time off from work. A lot of the flights, to get to Europe, it's near 30 hours. To get to PT1 in New Jersey, it's 24 hours. It's a full day of travel and some, depending on what time the flight is. So this time was the shortest flight I've had this year for an international event. It was 14 hours, which still sounds long, but it is a direct flight from Sydney to San Francisco, and then just I caught a Brendan Uber down to San Jose when he came to pick me up from the airport. But this is the shortest flight. So I decided to make the decision to just come in the morning before, and leave first thing on the Monday to basically treat this as an in and out event. So I had no in-person. I don't think I played a single game in person before the event. I got there on the Friday. I watched Brendan draft. I watched other play a few games, but I didn't play a single game. And I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you're someone who does need time to adjust, if you don't travel frequently and you do suffer from jet lag. And just in general, to be honest, just changing time zones is hard, whether you suffer from jet lag or not. It's going to impact your sleep. So I wouldn't recommend it. I would always say if you're going to come internationally, you probably want to get there a day or two before. Even if you're coming domestically, probably at least the day before the day, right? So the Wednesday in this case would probably be better. It gives you 2 nights of proper sleep. But yeah, it had to be done this time, and it worked out okay for me. I felt a little bit tired by sort of midway through day one, but day two I felt really good. So,
how did you feel about your preparation in general? And are there any lessons learned in particular in regards to how you prepare for this event?
I think so many people are going to have lessons learned from this event, right? Because it's 3 formats. We've not had this before. PT1 was 2 formats, which we hadn't had before, apart from the callings that preceded it. And then PT1, of course, is a bit more straightforward with what was more like a calling format with the singular format. They're easier to prepare for. I think a lot of people learned lessons. So many people were saying, spend the least amount of time on Blitz. It's like the last of the rounds. You might not even play it if you have a bad day. People had prepared for it less in general because people had done a ton of uprising draft for PT2. People played a ton of constructed post uprising, and it was just about the ban and restricted and a few tweaks. But Blitz was near on a pretty brand new format for a lot of people. So many people were saying haven't even played Blitz in the past 6 months. So some of my learnings were probably around how you prepare for a multi-format like this. I think for PT2, it was a lot easier to balance 2 formats. For Worlds, balancing 3 formats was really tough, and I felt underprepared for Blitz in the end. I changed my deck the week before. I didn't have enough reps into probably the mirror and prism as I would like, and I ended up changing cards the night before deck subs had to be done, which I would not recommend either, which I ended up making my deck worse into prism, which was two of the matchups I lost in Blitz, and one of them was a win and in. So yeah, I guess if I was like, okay, lessons learned on preparation for this event is like be a bit more pragmatic about the structure of the event and really thinking, for me, for like draft, I did a few drafts and that was important to refresh because I needed to sort of refocus my strategy, I think, a bit after a bit of a slight change from PT2 into my nationals into this event. But yeah, I wish I spent more time on Blitz and I should have been a bit for CC. I was really like, I knew what hero I was going to play pretty early on. And I knew I had this like a list of things. It was like, okay, I want to hit these matchups. And in my testing time, I was like, okay, these are where I want to spend my time. I didn't really do that with Blitz. It was a bit more like discovery and what's good. And then in the last week, it was like, okay, just rush to get reps into things, but not really as focused as I would like. So really big learning on the preparation there. I think if I had replicated my CC testing with Blitz testing, would have been golden. And that can be the difference between 1 or 2 losses that you take in the event.
I wish I had been there to try to convince you from making some of those Blitz deck choices against it. Yeah, I know the Blitz. In terms of like downgrading from the Prism matchup, yeah, it was unfortunate as you got those pairings across. All right, so I'm just going to get in. I just want to talk about the metagame because the class constructed metagame was pretty much what we expected, except there was one deck that was a bit of a surprise, I think, to us players here in North America, and that was Briar, Warden of Thorns. So the top three, the 3 usual suspects, I would call Fi, Oldhim, and Icelander. They could have came into the tournament sort of being 1, 2, or 3 in any order. I would have not been surprised. That being said, I would have probably put the most weight on Fi, and Fi was actually the most played deck. The third most played deck, though, was Briar, Warden of Thorns, a deck that was not seeing popularity on the regional battle hardened circuit beforehand, despite being pretty much the same deck that won Pro Tour number 2. This was not overlooked by the European and Asian regions as it ended up showing up as the third most played deck. I'm just going to talk about the top 4 here in the exact numbers. We had Fi Rising Rebellion at 85, Oldhim 71, Briar at 53, Icelander at 44. The next spots are a bit surprising, but they really could have been anything, right? Dash being the sort of the 5th most played deck here at 25, Jermai 16, and then Bravo Showstopper 14. Particularly surprising to see Dash show up in that much, right? Because Dash did have a prolifically bad Fi matchup, and Fi being the most played deck. Bravo Showstopper also very much surprised me, mostly because it was actually dominating the top tables in the early parts of the classic constructed rounds. And personally, I do believe that Bravo is kind of a worse Guardian than Oldhim, and I don't think that sort of crippling Crush and Showtime are worth the equity that you lose for not playing, things like Crown of Seeds and Stalagmite and stuff like that. But I think that it was a pretty interesting and dynamic class constructed format. It felt like you could bring pretty much anything to the tournament in the sense there was a lot of decks that were available, and yeah, it was. I believe is the most healthy class constructed format I've seen, maybe of all time. The numbers get even weirder when you go look at the calling and some of the top 8s in the calling. But that was sort of the World Championships for us. Hayden, how did that class constructed meta shape out for you? Is it what you expected? Sort of, et cetera, et cetera.
I was just going to ask you where Kano was on that list. I didn't hear you say Kano.
Kano was, yeah. So there's 4 players on Kano, 3 of which were in your testing group, and the other one was Mo Bogsley. No surprise, Mo Bogsley ended up on Kano. But prolific Kano players like Alexander Ford did not play Kano. So Kano was really under the radar during this tournament, despite being quite similar to the deck that was, there Pro Tour number 1, and the meta only favoring Icelander or Kano more and more, right? You have Prison, Living Legend out, one of Kano's worst matchups, and the top deck, the quote unquote top deck, is not a Rune Blade. It's not a deck that can easily pack Spell Void. So I was quite surprised to not see more players on Kano. I do understand why, but yeah, I think that this meta was ripe for Kano to come in and disrupt.
Yeah, I mean, from me, meta side, I mean, the biggest surprise to me was, like probably everyone had Briar being 3rd. I think that deck's very good, and we've talked about this on the pod over the last few weeks that Briar is in no way dead. That if anything, it's still one of the strongest aggro decks, and we saw lists very similar to what we saw in the top 8. I think of like Bartosz Zemba's deck was probably something we saw pretty similar list to in the end making top 8 with Chris Ali, etc. So. Not surprising to see it do well as well. Great conversion rate. Probably Icelander was the surprise to me for that to be the 4th most played deck. Like, I guess really when you looked at it, if you take a step back and look at the data, it's not as surprising. The narrative I think had Icelander higher. It had Icelander as maybe like even the 2nd most played deck, right? And like this Fire Icelander battle with Oldhim kind of there as well. And what it ended up being is that I think people tested, worked out that Icelander is a deck where you make a couple of mistakes and all of a sudden your matchups that are good for you become close, and your matchups that are close become potentially unfavorable for you. So, it was interesting to see. I actually didn't know the meta breakdown until the end of day one, and it felt to me like there was a lot of Icelander at the top tables. So I think I played 3 Icelander myself in the PT. So I think I was 4-0 and then played literally 3 Icelander in a row, I think, or 2 Icelander, then an Ultim, and then another Icelander. So there was a lot of it at the top tables. But looking around at the top tables, like it was the decks you expected to see. It was Icelander, it was Fi, it was Ultim, and Briar hanging out there as well. I think Fi probably had the toughest time just looking around the top tables, anecdotally. I don't know what the conversion was, because obviously we don't have a day 2 cut and it's multi-format, so it's a little bit messy. But I think when you look over at the calling, to see, I was it one Fi in the top 8 of the calling in the end. There was like 2 Rhina, there was Icelander in there, etc. So I think Fi was like the deck that took the hardest hit in the end based on the meta sort of expectation and the breakdown. And probably Briar was the real winner.
Well, looking at it from the coverage point of view, Fi was definitely the deck to beat. Just looking at the configurations of the other decks that were not Fi. A lot of them were packing hate for Fi, right? We saw a lot of choke slams in Oldham. We saw things like Crush the Weak. We saw Bravo even showing his face at the top table. Like a lot of people were ready for Fi, and I do believe his deck to beat. Speaking to Icelander, I was able to go to the Dallas Battle Harden and go to the Battle Harden in Columbus, Ohio. What I think happened is that Michael Hamilton obviously won with a list that was 2 cards, or it was actually 3 cards different than the list he won this tournament with. Another player top 8 with his exact list that he played that he won nationals with. A lot of people picked up that deck, right? They took it to the regional Battle Harden circuit, and they did not have success with it, period. Even Michael Hamilton brought that Icelander deck to the Columbus Battle Harden and was not able to make it into top 8. I do believe it's fundamentally a bit of a harder deck to play. And it's actually, as the Fi started packing more belittles, that matchup was just not a freebie, right? It became a bit harder. So I think that people picked up Icelander, didn't have the success that they would have expected with it, and then started to come off of it. So I was not too surprised to see it as the 4th most played deck, but I do agree there were a lot of narratives around it. But just seeing the Classic Constructed meta evolve from Battle Harden to Battle Harden, I was thinking, I think that more people are going to go for Fi just being sort of that linear, aggressive aggro deck that forces its opponent to react.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, because I know you were talking to a lot of players in the lead up to this event, so it'd be great to hear your kind of insight of what you learned from those players, about what was their perception of the meta? What were the things that they were doing to try and attack a meta they thought was going to happen? But the thing I kind of noticed from watching a bit of coverage back already is like one of the things that was a discussion point was like Ultim. People were shifting to this like Frostfang Pummel Ultim. That was like something to disrupt the fires, to make that matchup better, more proactive, and also just how good Pummel is against Icelander. But what were you hearing from your side, doing all that sort of background detective work you were doing, talking to players, listening to teams?
Honestly, there was a lot of players that were just playing Fi because they thought it was the best aggro deck and the most resilient deck. Like Fi did not have really bad matchups, right? I think that even the Guardians that were tech to beat Fi were not particularly favored into it, maybe slightly, but you can even see on coverage some of those decks that were very, very tech to beat Fi just get run over by that deck because it's just so powerful and it does this thing pretty much every game. I heard about a lot of players that were playing Briar, right? This was something that I had sort of suspected for a while and talked about the pod for a long time. I was like, why are people not playing this deck? And the answer was, Oldham's playing Hypothermia and Icelander's got more of a free reign because Prism has Living Legend out. But Icelander was falling in popularity in these Ultim lists. I looked at every single one that came across online or sort of in the coverage booth at Columbus, Ohio. None of them were playing Hypothermia. And you could see that they were all sort of switching to this more ice build. It was I think the meta was ripe for Briar to sort of make a splash, and it did. It performed the best out of any classic constructed deck at the tournament, even better than Hayden, which was surprising. Maybe some of your other teammates there bringing down no, I'm kidding. But yeah, I would say that overall, this is pretty much exactly what I expected. I did expect Icelander to be above Briar, and I was very surprised to see Dash as the 5th most played deck. I think that Dash was not well positioned at all in this meta.
I think Dash was a pick to. I didn't see the list. My thought when I saw it was that people were packing Dash to what could potentially be like a really that is a giant bottle of water you're drinking from, Brendan. If you're not watching the YouTube stream, Brendan just picked up. You know,
breaking the fourth wall like that. What are you doing? You're supposed to play it off.
You know when you have those like coolers at like an office or like an event, and they put the bottle on top to like that's literally what Brendan just drunk from. I swear.
It's just a gallon jug. It's normal, man.
I think people were looking to take advantage of Ultims, of people thinking that in the end, the discourse and what people would find is that Ultim was favored into Fire. Regardless of what you believe, I think that's what people thought, and they were taking Ultim as a pick to potentially go into that. And if you're playing this kind of in-between version where you can just like boost to heck and be super aggressive, you can potentially still just beat Fires as well, beat Briars, etc. So I think in the end that is kind of what happened. But yeah, it was an interesting breakdown. What about sort of from the Fire side? Like, what were you hearing from these teams, these groups? What was their mirror plan? Because obviously I think everyone thought that Fire would, if not be the top deck, probably be the second deck. So did people have plans? What were they thinking?
So it's a tale as old as time, where you need to draw the Art of Wars and your opponent needs to not. But we did see a dichotomy between Mask of the Pouncing Lynx and Mask of Momentum, and the addition of cards like Engulfing Flamewave actually in the mirror. Outside of that, I didn't hear too much tech other than like very spicy tech, which didn't actually show up. But it does seem fundamentally in the mirror. The biggest question is between a card like Mask of the Pouncing Lynx or Mask of Momentum, and people are very, very diehard on which one is correct. And the community, I do believe, is currently split on that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because to me, I just assumed that everyone was like, yeah, Lynx is the way. Whereas like I have also thought that at times it was like, well, Mask of Momentum. But, you know, one of the things that we found as a testing group with Fire is like, you know, blocking's pretty good. You can defend. And I was like, well, I think in that case, people should probably just be playing Lynx. So it was interesting to hear that people were still kind of split on it. I think it depended on what cards you had, what you thought the game plan was overall. Could you try and, if people were playing Mask of Momentum, did that mean that you could defend more and look for your opportunity to dig for Art of Wars, etc.? Yes.
So not to get too spicy, but I do actually think Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is probably one of the biggest targets for a ban, because it is effectively, so quantitatively, I think it is actually Carrion Husk without a downside. It almost always represents 6 damage on board, and it has that dual modality being able to block as well. Like if you absolutely need in a scenario, it's a crazy piece of equipment. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at a permanent that you start with on the battlefield that does pretty much at least 6 damage. Like it's super, super powerful. The idea with Mask of Momentum is that with these 5 decks is in the mirror is that you can threaten it twice, right? If you can threaten it once, it's definitely not good enough. It's not better than Mask of Pouncing Lynx, but if you can threaten it twice every single turn, maybe. I'm definitely a Mask of Pouncing Lynx. I'm in that group.
I think something to think about, 2 things on that, is like, what's the value of the unknown card you could draw off the top, right? And you've got to average that out across your deck. Like, what if it's a blue? What if it's a red 0 cost attack? What if it's, say, an Engulfing Flamewave, whatever it might be? You've got to even and weigh that up, right? But the other side of it is like, well, if you believe and firmly believe in your testing, the game is like max 4 turns. Presenting Mask of Momentum every second, twice on a turn, is that good enough? Like drawing 2 cards, 3 cards, is that going to outweigh the +6, +7, +8 potential of the Lynx? And that's why I think you have to work out, especially if people are trying to downgrade your Lynx to closer to a 6 damage. Because if your opponent doesn't block, Lynx can be worth a lot more than 6. It really depends. You've got to weigh that up. So it's a bit of a philosophical discussion. The last thing I wanted to say on that is I agree with you. Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, I think, is potentially. I heard Amulet of Ice might be top of the list, but
all right, let's not. No, there's no need for blasphemy in this household, Hayden.
I heard that one particular dev thought that Amulet of Ice maybe should have been hit, but Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, Crouching Tigers, and some of these combo plans that can be played with Mask of the Pouncing Lynx might be a little bit busted. Salt the Wound for 15.
Yeah, it's already good enough. And it's the thing about equipment. Like there's got to be some way of evaluating equipment sort of quantitatively and deciding like what's the threshold that's too much. And 6 is probably too much. And it's very consistently going to be 6. Nevertheless, I am not going to be sitting on my rooftop yelling for bans. I think this class constructor meta was freaking awesome. So let's go into Blitz. I'm just going to quickly break it down for y'all. And I do think that I'm going to preface this by saying this is absolutely exactly what I expected, except for the green man, which creeped up here. So we got Icelander at 106, Oldhim at 72, Chain at 50, Prism at 35, Rhinar at 22, Kasai at 11, and Dorinthia at 8. And then the rest is sort of usual suspects on the line. Important to note, 5 was at 6, and 5 being the most played deck at the Battlehardened Dallas Blitz event, which was I don't even know why that was. But yeah, Icelander, the best deck. I do think it is fundamentally, and it's not up for too much debate as the best deck in Blitz. The cool thing about it, though, is that it can be built in actually many different ways. Hayden is going to do a deck tech on sort of their build, which was quite different. You see builds utilizing pure spells, but more Bowlander builds with more 0-for-4s, builds that run Snapdragon Scalers, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to Blitz, and I have been shouting this from my rooftop, Hayden, is I think that if Blitz is not a turn 0, turn 1 combo format, the most unfair thing you can do in Blitz is just be quantitatively above your opponent by 1 to 2 damage on each turn cycle. And if you do that and you're able to take 2 turns in a row, as Icelander is, you will likely win most of your games unless you get absolutely juiced by Rhinar himself. Yeah, Rhinar coming in at 22, not a deck I expected to be there. Prism also, despite being the 4th most played deck, was absolutely rife at the top tables. So many Prism at the top tables there to prey on Oldhim and also prey on Icelander. But I do think that fundamentally its Icelander matchup is not even close. Definitely not a 90-10, and it's more of a 55-45 if that depends how the Icelander is built. Great meta, great Blitz meta. I actually thought that it was quite healthy, and I expected more Chain. I'll say that.
Yeah, me too. Evidently by the cards that I changed not long before the event started. But the thing about this meta is like it's so unexplored. Like you could point and be like, wow, Prism was like too strong, and like all Icelanders as a 2-horse format or whatever. But so unexplored, this format. Like just talking to the players at these top tables, talking to the players who play these events, like they scratch the surface because that's all you could do in the time frame. You know, the bans happened 6 weeks ago, I think, if that, 5 weeks ago. Like you could scratch the surface and that's it. And plus you had to deal with Class Constructed, you had to deal with retouching on Uprising Draft, etc. So there's so much more to be said for this Blitz format, and we're about to have a new set come in and inject itself into the format. So I think there's so much room for growth and exploration. And I thought one of the most interesting things about this Blitz format was, yes, Prism 35 decks. I think there was about 7 or 8 at the top tables. And I think a big part of it, now there's a bit of a fallacy here, I think, but you can expect certain players, or at least a percentage of certain players, to be at the top tables come the end of an event. Like the best players are the best players, and they're not going to perform every event, but a chunk of them will. And if you think that the best players are going to do a certain thing, you know, be that play Icelander, then why not play Prism if you're one of those other best players and try and target them if you think Prism is good into that deck. So I think that's what we saw. I think we saw some good players make some really good decisions about what they wanted to take. And, you know, the round, I want to say it was round 15, I played Chris Ayali it was our winning in for top 8. The winner of that match was going to be in the top 8 no matter what happened in the last round. And Chris was playing Prism, and he talked me afterwards. He said, you know, people were going to play Icelander. We made this decision to play Prism because we thought that the best players were going to play Icelander, and that's what happened. So, really interesting meta, and I'm excited. Actually, I think we have a skirmish season coming up, or maybe it's about to be announced, but I think it's the best time for a skirmish season because this format feels great.
Funny anecdote is I talked to a lot of players that were not playing Icelander. Most of the players that weren't also on Prism. So players playing Oldhim, Chain, Rhinar, Kasai, etc. And all of them actually told me that Icelander was the best deck. There are so many people being like, yep, Icelander is the best. Oh, what are you playing, Chain? It's like, what? Oh, what are you playing, Oldhim? It was funny to see that because I don't think that the Blitz format is something, and I haven't heard too many complaints, but I don't think it's something you should be complained about. It feels quite fair. I would say that Prism is that Icelander is the best deck. But if you're going to say Icelander is the best deck, you better be playing it next time. Like all these Oldhimers were like, yeah, Icelander is the best, but I just had to play Oldhim. I was like, dude, Oldhim's the worst.
I think Ultim might be potentially one of them. I thought it was reasonable, but more and more towards the event and through the event, I actually think it was potentially a pretty poor pick. The one thing I want to ask you this question because this came up, but I want to first of all sort of say my piece on it. A lot of people, if you haven't seen this, so round 16 of the Pro Tour, the last round of Blitz, there is a game on the feature match between a unknown Icelander player and a Rhinar player named Zach. The Icelander player shall
That was
not
my
be
favorite
named.
game. I'm so happy you brought that up.
And the Rhinar player intimidates the whole hand of the Icelander player, puts them to 6 on turn 0, and then proceeds to take their whole hand for the next 2 turns. and eventually killed them. And yes, the Icelander player was me, but no, it was not a win. And in the end, I would have been ninth because I needed either Michael Hamilton or Rob Catton to lose, and they both won. So I would have been ninth. So it's okay, guys. It's all right. But a lot of people messaged me afterwards and said, wow, like how you must feel devastated. And that points to why Blitz is such a terrible format. And I actually just disagree, to be honest. I was the one sat in that chair, and I understand what people are saying, but like, that is a meta pick. Like Zach made a meta call to play Reinhardt, to play a deck that has the capability to do this, but also has, is not as consistent, has potential issues into decks like Chain and Kasai, which he dodged as far as I understand, and played a lot of Icelander and Prism and Ultim, etc. So yeah, I just want to say that I think the kind of criticism being leveled at Blitz as a Worlds format, everyone got the chance to test this format, and I think this format's quite deep and make their choices. And games like that, yeah, they're going to happen, but they're actually not going to happen that often. And, people who play a deck like Reinhardt, like we considered it, but you've got to take into account.
We tested it. We tested Icelander versus Reinhardt, and we just decided that on the Delta, that doesn't happen as often as you want it to, right? And that's why we picked Icelander.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Reinhardt is favored into Icelander, even if they don't do that. But, like you've got to contend with Chain, you've got to contend with the other decks. So, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this kind of criticism being leveled of like, this is an example of why Blitz shouldn't be a Worlds format, etc.?
I totally disagree, but I also think that it was funny how we banned Storm Shadows needs to be banned in Icelander. But the argument that it was banned in Kano because because of like unfun interactions. It's like, I told you the big green man will literally kill you on turn 0. It's like you can't have your cake and eat it. It's like you also got to do so. Hopefully we get our Storm Shadows back in Kano. And total derail, but I thought Hayden, when you started talking about that, I thought we were going to get our first Hayden Dale bad beat story. You're like, so no shit, there I was, last round of the Pro Tour, barraging beatdown, Alpha Rampage discards massacre, dude. I got to tell a little anecdote. So I was standing beside that match. I actually was not casting. And I kid you not, his opponent did that. And then looks at Hayden and goes, feels like my whole tournament's been like that. I'm just like, I was laughing so hard.
Charles Zach is a good dude. Yeah. He went 8-0 on day 2, just a monster run to finish in the top 16 from 4-4 on day 1. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to ask your opinion on that. Look, I understand. I get it why people sort of point to that match, and yeah, those things can happen. And but also, if you're rooting for the Rhino in that situation, like what a freaking game to watch. You know what I mean? Like it's very interesting. What else do you want to cover from a Worlds perspective? There's I wouldn't mind talking about a couple of like lessons learned and stuff. But is there anything from your side, Brendan, you want to kind of go through?
So overall venue and atmosphere great. Venue could be better. It was effectively a large tent. I watched the video of the flag procession. The venue looks freaking sick in that video for some reason. Like the way they framed it looks great. But as a player, it was like, okay, we're at the World Championships. We're at a tent. So I have to say, don't hate me, James White, but I think we can do better next year. And I think that Legend Story thinks that we can do better as well. I was surprised that we weren't actually in the convention center too. But atmosphere is great. People from all around the world, first world championship. People were super hyped. A lot of positivity. And I think overall, everybody had a fantastic weekend.
Yeah, the atmosphere was electric is what I would say. Like people were so excited to be there, and rightly so. Like it was an amazing event. And yeah, like you say, the venue had left a lot to be desired. But my understanding is James was not happy with that venue. I think that was not something that he had much say in, and I think he found out what that venue looked like not long before the event started. That's my understanding, at least. So I would expect that that's probably one of the worst venues we're going to see for an organized Flesh and Blood play event of this level, and expect to see better in the future. But all that said, like, it definitely wasn't enough to take away from the event. And by day 2, day 3, like, people were just like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm just having a great time. I'm at the World Championships. I'm at the Calling San Jose. The side events were popping on the last day, like all the way through until like 8 or 9 o'clock, I think. It was going off on day 2 as well. Like, there was just so many things happening. And I think overall, like, the experience for the majority of people was hugely positive. And I'm sure there was, some not so positive stories. But I think for the negatives, the positives just so far outweighed it. And yeah, great experience, I thought.
Yeah, so I think I'll just talk a little bit about from my end as a caster, just quickly. I did really enjoy it. Casting was actually something that I'd wanted to do since my inception in Flesh and Blood. So the first Austin Calling, when I met James and Sasha, I did tell them that I wanted to be a caster eventually. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I had turned down a previous opportunity at the Calling Vegas. I'd come off winning 4 Road to Nationals in a row, so I just felt like I was too well positioned to potentially start taking down some of these tournaments. And I denied it. I had sort of pushed it off. The opportunity to cast the World Championships was a huge opportunity at that, and I'm very grateful I was able to get it. A lot of people helped me out there. Sort of the usual suspects, the Tandon, Flake, Brian Gottlieb's, like they vouched for me and helped me get sort of that amazing first opportunity. I would say that a lot of people came up and asked me, is it something you'd want to do again, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, that question, I would say on my side is yes, but I'm the least important answer to that question. The most important answer is, would you all want me to cast again? It depends. The most important thing is how it was received, if you enjoyed it, and if you thought I brought value. If so, it is something I would consider in the future. I did get a lot of nice comments, I think, but I'm pretty wary of nice comments because I feel like a lot of people would just give them to be complimentary, to be nice. And, if you're coming up to say hi, it's like, it's an easy low to the ground compliment. So I'm always a bit, on my toes in case, but I would say that if it's something you enjoyed, I know that on my side, looking back, my microphone was a bit loud because I had to project my voice. Unfortunately, I have a bit of a range. So as you know, and Hayden's talked about on the podcast, I got a range, and it is absolutely, absolutely devastating to be too quiet. It's simply not an option. That's one way to never come back and to potentially ruin an entire cast. I do think that my volume probably should have been turned down a little bit on the production side, maybe turn down the EQ. But at that, if you can understand what I'm saying and I'm able to sort of portray myself in a way that adds value to the conversation, I'm happy that I did that, and I'll work on sort of the volume and the voice work in the future. But yeah, if you enjoyed, let me know. Maybe shoot a comment below. But the most important thing and the best thing that you could do if you feel passionate about it is let LSS know. Like, if you thought that it was a good job and you want me to come back, that's the best thing you can do, because that's the only way they get feedback. Not a lot of feedback comes from casters, right? Maybe you have told me personally, but if you're able to sort of reach out, let them know, then that's the way to have me back. But I had a fantastic time, and it was a pleasure and an honor to call the matches of the best players in the world.
Yeah, I got to second that. Brendan, I thought I've watched back a little bit of coverage, and I thought you did an amazing job. I thought, you brought a level of detail. I think this gallon of water is going to do me, and I tell you what, it did an amazing job in terms of what you brought to the matches. And I hope that we see you back in the booth again. And I would just second what Brendan said. If you want to see Brendan there, like, please throw some support. It sounds like we're asking for you to go and like plug Brendan, but it's not. It's like, if you really genuinely enjoyed Brendan's coverage, like, please do go and give that feedback, because like Brendan says, LSS have no real way of knowing other than the feedback they receive from the players and those watching the coverage at home. So please do so. And if you've got any particular things you want to drop in the comments and let Brendan know about, that'll also get you in the draw for this swag pack for this 5K. But yeah, no, great job, Brendan. And I'm excited to go back and watch some more coverage. I haven't watched back my I know you didn't cover the last game. I haven't watched that yet, but also I think you covered my Dash game, which I think was a great game. So I'm excited to go and watch that. But I heard, and I did listen to it, so you did a good job casting my Kano game as well. And I know all you wanted was a Kano game on stream, and you got it. So
yeah, you'll like the Dash game a bit more, because I was very focused on the need to draw the second hypothermia, and it came at like the perfect time. That was the best game. Actually, Hayden, I'll tell you right now, that was the best game that I cast on camera. Maybe aside from the top 8 game with Michael Hamilton, the first match where the opponent Arsenal the Sync Blow, which I know is a mistake after the brain freeze has revealed, but it was awesome to watch Michael Hamilton adjust his game plan on the fly to a situation that he's never seen and just win the game out from there. I think if we look back retrospectively, we might be like, okay, it's quite, if we were really to break it down right now with all of our facilities, we could be like, yes, that is objectively correct for Michael to do. And there's this like very simple way to win the game. But to on the fly at the World Championships, adjust and develop a game plan that you have never played before, never seen before, never practiced for, like, that is sort of what a champion does. And it was awesome to cast that game from my perspective. I do have to give a shout out to all the other casters in the booth. Eric, Brian Gottlieb, Tannen, Flake. It was fantastic to be able to work with them, true professionals. And yeah, they really brought me under the wing. I only got the rookie treatment from Flake. I'm analytical. So at one point he was like, hey man, you got, they do this like head to head thing where there's two names that come up and their records and the term. He's like, you got this next one. And then it pops up. By the way, Flake I think he's of Polish descent or something like that. Pops up two just like absolutely straight consonants, like Polish names. And I'm just like, dude, it was totally on accident, but it was hilarious because there was no way I could read it, and we didn't get any sort of phonetic spelling at that point. But just a funny little anecdote from behind the booth.
I saw that. Hopefully, Gift had me out with this one. No, great stuff. I want to talk a little bit about, just before we kind of wrap up, some like lessons learned from like playing an event of the scale in Worlds and the current format as well as we head into Dynasty. That I kind of want to share. And I don't know if I've really said this to you, Brendan, so I think even Brendan might find these interesting. But one of my biggest takeaways from the weekend was I think I talked about this a little bit already, about preparation. Testing in a way that's going to set you up for the event you're about to play. So many things I heard from people was that they did not touch Uprising Draft again and really struggled. The draft meta had evolved and changed. People had new ideas about how they wanted to approach the format. They had card evaluation had changed for them. And some people were stuck in the Pro Tour Lille or even Nationals meta and hadn't retouched this format and got punished for it. I think trying to have your testing reflect the event you're about to play is like one of the biggest things I take away from this. My downfall was Blitz, like I said before. For others, it was Uprising. I think very few was a Classic Constructed. I think Classic Constructed across the board was the time most spent by most players, from what I heard. I think as well, like kind of a big learning is like these kind of split formats as well really demand you to switch your mentality quickly as well. So you go from draft 3 rounds to Classic Constructed, and that is it's a very different sort of game that you're about to play. And especially if you're playing different sort of decks, you go from maybe you drafted Fi in your first draft, and now all of a sudden you're playing like Ultim or something. Like it can be quite a big mental shift, and I think you have to be prepared for that. They do give you like a 45-minute break, but I think it's important that you kind of like take that time, like reset, get like maybe you had a bad draft, but it has to be put out of the way. And that was like a big thing I think was a takeaway for a lot of people, including myself, was like move on from the last format, stop thinking about it and think about the next. Yeah.
So we didn't talk about it, but Hayden actually 6-0 drafts, so you should probably listen to what he says when it comes to that.
I'm really keen to talk more about this draft format, but it's basically done now. But I have so much to say, and I talked to a lot of people about this during the event. Before the event started, draft was what I felt most confident about. It's something that I revisited a little bit post Lille and Nationals, but it's also something that I felt my fundamental understanding was continuing to improve. And I disagreed with a lot of people that said like, this is one of the worst draft formats. It's so variance based. There's so many things that can go wrong. It's all about the people that pass to you. It's not about your decisions, et cetera, et cetera. Like I disagree with basically all of it, to be honest. I think this draft format is quite technical, and I mean I disagree with people about this in Tales of Aria as well, but like all I'll say is I think just I don't know, that's my view, and I think I've gone 11-1 in my last rounds of draft at OP, large OP events, so I don't know.
Yeah, Uprising was definitely the set that I've had the hardest time in terms of drafting, and I know personally, just for my own sanity's sake, I'm excited to get into a new set just so I can have a fresh start. Yeah, Uprising just it wasn't my draft set, but I do think that, I mean, I was super happy when you went 6-0 in draft. It was absolutely what you need in that, like in that tournament. There's nothing better than sort of XOing a draft and going to those constructed formats, just having that cushion. So that was awesome. I know you did force Fi absolutely through both drafts. No, definitely did not do that. Played the Icelander and was able to squeak it out. Anything else, Hayden, before we close? I know we're running a bit long. We've said it a million times. The weekend was awesome. I'm super excited for the next one. The community in Flesh and Blood. It's just, it's amazing, right? Like I haven't been, I don't think I'll ever be able to match these experiences ever again in my life. And I just truly appreciate the opportunity to have them and share them with you all.
Yep. Completely sort of second that. The last thing I wanted to share in terms of one of my big learnings from the testing process, the weekend, and kind of Flesh and Blood this year, to be honest, is around hero selection and deck selection for these events. And I've flip-flopped between, I just a quick sort of like journey of where my year's been. My Australian Nationals win at the start of the year came from being really locked in early on a deck, on this Viscerai deck, and tweaking and tuning and learning the matchups as much as possible, to top 16 at PT1 on a deck that I changed the night before. And I felt like, well, I can do either, right? PT Lil, again, was a bit more of a representation of that kind of swapping in late, building a deck late, and not having the reps and being honestly quite punished for it. And that was a big learning coming into this World Championships, was I wanted to lock on something pretty early and just get the reps, have the best fundamental understanding of game plans I could, and have the tightest matchup plans. And to be honest, I actually think that's what Michael did as well. That's what like your world champion did. He stuck to his guns with Icelander. He improved his matchups. He tweaked the deck. He just got reps and learnt the matchups inside and out, and got thoroughly rewarded for it. And I felt that way about Kano. I wouldn't say that maybe Kano was the best pick for the weekend. I personally didn't want to play any of the top 3 decks for various reasons. So Kano was like one that, talking with like Sasha, knew he was going to lock in on early and was like, yeah, I'm here for the journey. Let's just like learn this deck inside and out and come up with the best list. And my kind of big takeaway is I think for me, that's the preferred option going forward. It might not always be the solution. Like, something like a Lightning Briar might be found out 2 weeks before a big event, and, it's time to pivot and adjust. But this format, I think, this game, Classic Constructor as a format, I think we have longer time periods of events now. We're getting 2 or 3 large events with pretty similar formats, and I think you can get really rewarded for, I wouldn't say being a specialist, but really understanding and learning your deck and tweaking it for the meta and adapting to the meta. And I think if you have a few heroes on tap that you can go to do that, I think that really helps. So my big learning is, I think if you want to be really good at this game, I think learning a couple of heroes from different kind of segments of the pie, so to speak, and playing those at events and just being prepared to move between them and find the best list and have the best game plans is probably going to reap you the best rewards, but that could change in the future. But that was kind of my big learning from not just this event, but this year, I think.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you at this point in the game. With so many heroes available, I think that
counting them all,
hunkering down a few and truly being a master of those is, you see players consistently reap the rewards of using that strategy. So I totally agree with you. Hayden, before I let you close out the entire pod, just going to circle back around to some of the Arsenal Pass Fitness Challenge stuff. So we already talked about it's a marathon in Austin, Texas on February 19th. That does include a 5K and a half marathon, which are both available. We have tons of other big content creators involved. This is sort of a soft announcement. I'm sure it'll be hard announcing over the next month or two. But if you are interested, definitely get involved. Let me know. We're going to put our referral link and our team invite link in the description below on YouTube. That referral link just to kind of link us all together so they know that we're all signing up together. It's not for any sort of monetary benefit or anything like that. Do keep in mind though, a marathon is a lot. So if that's something you have in mind, definitely start training. And if you want to join me on that journey, come join the Arsenal Pass Patreon Discord. There'll be a bunch of other people, I'm sure, on that journey as well, sort of learning it as we go and trying to accomplish this. And yeah, half marathon, 5K as well. We'll be distributing merch, prizes, raffles for all of these. Hopefully we'll get some sponsors, try to help some people get out there. Like, this really does have the opportunity to be the biggest community event that Flesh and Blood has done up until now. And I think it's awesome. We had a lot of good feedback off the last fitness challenge, and we have an opportunity in Flesh and Blood to sort of shift the paradigm, right, of the community. There's no reason why this shouldn't be a part of it. And I think if we're impacting positive change, which it seems that the last one did, is something we should absolutely push forward to. So I'm very excited. So yeah, Arsenal Pass, Patreon Discord for like direct line of communication and training and all that. And yeah, mark your calendars, February 19th. And by the way, if you, just so you know, so you don't get caught off guard, Austin is hilly, very hilly. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, get involved, and more details to come. Episode 83 of Arsenal Pass World Championship. So I guess this is a bit more of a human interest pod, but I enjoy taking a break from really specific competitive content and talking about the community and the things that happen in this community and reflecting on things like this. And we did get to talk about the formats and what happened, and I'm excited to see what Dynasty has in store for us with the release this weekend. I'm going to be heading to a couple of these armor events because honestly, Brendan, I haven't said this, but I wanted to end the pod with this. My plan was actually to take about a 6 to 8 week break from Flesh and Blood. My plan was to still do the pod and still do some content, but I think at this point I'm probably not going to. I'm probably going to play through with Dynasty, but I think I'm probably going to end up skipping ProQuest Season 1 at this point. because it doesn't make sense to play at this point anyway. And it's a shorter window, and I can take a few weeks break and see what happens when we get some OP announcements for next year. But we'll see what happens. So episode 84 coming next week is going to be a dive into Dynasty and Classic Constructed and Blitz. So if you're out for more of that level up sort of stuff that we do put out there, I think next week's going to be a great pod. But you do want to follow us, we're on Twitter, Brendan APG over there. I'm a Fian_Dow. Come and join in Fab Twitter. It's popping off post Worlds. A lot of stuff happening over there. Come and join in. It's the best version of Twitter, I would say. And I don't, whether you want to talk about what's happening with Twitter and whatever. Big shout out to all of our patrons. If you're not an Arsenal Pass patron and do want to join up, it's patreon.com/Arsenal Pass. We do have a lot of stuff coming up this month with these deck techs we've got coming up and other things with Dynasty. And just go and drop a like and a comment on this YouTube and be subbed YouTube video and go in the draw to win this swag pack that we're going to be giving out. Winners announced next week. So you've got until Tuesday US time before we grab 2 winners for that.
I have a funny ending anecdote, little tidbit, a little cherry on top for you all. So in relation to Twitter, when Michael Hamilton got on the broadcast to do his Pro Tour champion interview, they put my Twitter handle under his name on accident. For a solid 10 seconds, I got probably over 100 followers. My phone just, oh my goodness. Funny. Probably 10 seconds was just at Brendan APG. Just a little anecdote, a little funny situation that happened. But yeah, until next time, see y'all next week.
Yeah.